Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Opus Magnum with Lyte. We're here with Armor Filament, the first puzzle in the story mode that has an infinite product. Well, it's not strictly infinite, it's just really quite long and repeating, but it's close enough. And here we are with our low area solution. It is really quite straightforward. You use only the tools that are absolutely necessary, and you just get the job done. It does it very slowly. This one is not as cheap as possible. It uses a piston. We know by now that if you use a piston, it's not the cheapest it's gonna be. Because either you can shave a tiny bit off by using a fixed arm with a track, or just a regular old fixed arm will do. In the case of our good friend, the Armor Filament, just a fixed arm is enough. Now, granted, it does take a little bit of something to get it actually working right, because you need to train it to loop in a way that will reset properly. And that first little bit you saw there, it does a little something weird right here that you don't really know what it's doing until after it resets and tries again. So it kicks it out such that we have space to put in the mercury. And then when you bring it back, it lines up properly. Now, this particular puzzle does teach you a lot about what to do with infinite products in the future, and it reveals some potential exploits. Because the trouble with an infinite product is you can't measure whether or not you actually make an infinite product, because you can't just run it forever. Someone could make something that runs for 50,000 cycles and then crashes. It would take them a long time, but they could do it. And so what we get is not a measurement of an infinite product. It just measures from here and counts how many times you actually made the product on the way over. But the way it does so is slightly idiosyncratic, I guess is the right word for it, because you would think that once you make yourself a piece of iron and you put it in some way in which it overlaps with the bin, you would have one product, but alas, you have zero. And then if we do this, once we have two over it, we will have one. This will come in very handy later when we're trying to optimize down the cycles. Because with the cost, you just use the one arm. With the space, you use only what you're given. The cycles is really fascinating because there are a lot of weird things that you can do to get your cycles down on this one. Now, once again, due to either the number of solutions or the fact that I switch between two different machines when working on these, you'll notice two of these at the top where I've got 49 cycles, global record. These were made last. I don't know why they're up top now, but I made these two last. We'll get to those last. You can look forward to seeing 49 cycles on this, but 59 is where I started because I never learned. Through the earlier story mode puzzles, by this point, I still didn't get it into my block head that you should never, well, hardly ever, pass down the line using a pair of arms. Not when you could just use a track and move it faster. Now, this doesn't save much, but when you're trying to optimize it down by a single cycle, these tiny things do, in fact, help. So, Never Learn was 59. Railgun, which uses the rails, is 58. I mean, it's a modest improvement. It felt good at the time. But then you start to notice some of the weird things that you can do. For example, cycle skip here. Since we noticed that putting the iron over here is what it really measures, well, if you put the iron there earlier, you can skip a cycle. Because previously I was leaving it on the binder. And, well, if you take it over and then bring it back, you can skip one entire creation of an iron. And it saves you several cycles, because it takes several cycles to make yourself an iron. And so this one wobbles back and forth and gets you done several cycles faster. We were at 58, I believe. We're now at 55. So yes, 58 down to 55. And then you take a look and go, well, we're pushing it off of the end of the binder. What if we could push it off of somewhere slightly sooner? And that's when we twist it off. And so we grab ourselves our iron, we twist it from here over. So instead of bringing it onto the second half of the binder and then onto the exit, we bring it straight to the exit and then move it up. And there's plenty of time for the next iron to get there. And so you keep doing the same thing where you bring it off of this glyph of projection onto the binder, onto the exit. And so you get all the way down to a nice low number of 54. So we had 59, dropped it down to 58. With the cycle skip down to 55, cycle skip, we optimized a touch down to 54. Now, to get beyond 54, you have to understand how the infinite bin actually detects what's going on. And that's where wrong end comes in. Because you know how I was saying that when you have an iron on there, it sees 0 products? And when you have 2 iron on there, it sees 1 product? Well, there's a way to trick it into accepting every iron that is on there. And that trick involves putting a lead on the end. Because now you have an iron and a bond, which is what it's really looking for. It's looking for an iron and a bond. Now, I've tried this with other infinite products, and it doesn't work quite right on the other infinite products. So I'm not certain how this false end necessarily works in the long run, but I know for this particular puzzle, having a lead on the end does not cancel out your product. And so this 1 iron counts as 1 iron. So by getting that early lead out in front of the iron production, every iron counts, which shaves another full loop off of this solution. So we use our fancy cycle skip -1, but with that early fake iron on the end, we cut it down to 51. So we drop another 3 off of cycle skip -1 to wrong end. And then you can optimize wrong end a little bit. Using this loop, we're able to shimmy off some of the cycles a little bit, where we're able to get these leads going a little sooner. Like normally we would have 4 between each of the lead grabs because there's 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 on the Quicksilver. But by pulling this lead just a tiny bit sooner, it shaves that 1 cycle off of our previous solution. Because the timing on wrong end had the Quicksilver being pulled on cycle 2 instead of cycle 1, such that we could get that lead out front. So by doing this little shimmy here on this track, we're able to pull these a cycle sooner, but still have this 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th happen when we would normally have it with this pull speed. So you'll notice that one of these is a little bit slower than the rest. So you get that little bit of a hiccup on number 4. The other ones are pretty darn quick. And so that got us to 50. And I got stuck at 50 for quite some time. I knew we needed to get to 49, but I'm here at 50 going, I've got nothing. Like this is as fast as this track is ever going to take me, because it takes it from here to there as fast as it can get there. And so I was like, okay, fine. We got to 50. We need to get to 49 by hook or by crook. we will get to 49. And so that's where we get back up here to exploit and then fair play. So exploit here, you'll notice, has an enormous cost. That is one pricey machine right there. It's not huge compared to some of these other solutions, but my goodness, is it expensive. And that's because it's got all the arms in the world. It's huge, it's weird, it's complicated. It's not that complicated. It just completely changes the paradigm of how you solve one of these problems, because it doesn't make an infinite product. It makes a length 12 product. And so it takes the mercury nice and slow, the lead faster than you normally would, and that's the end of the lead production, halfway through the puzzle. And then it dunks it in the bin at 49. And then it breaks. It cannot keep going. It's not designed to keep going. And so what it does is it makes the whole length 12 lead. It quicksilvers it up to tin. Meanwhile, a 13th lead is making its way to the end here for the false end. And the rest of the mercury is making its way into position because to get to 49, it takes 48 to just make the mercury. Quicksilver, whatever you want to call it. Because you need 12 times 2, 24 times 2 cycles to generate it, 48 cycles just to make the mercury, which means the moment the mercury comes out, you have to be moving it into the bin. So this mercury has to be the last thing you do. You can't move it onto the binder. You don't have time. You have to move it from the mercury into the bin. And so what it does is it breaks it into 2 pieces, does this massive amount first, boom, brings the lead over, and then does the next massive amount, and then drops it in the bin. It's cheaty, it's wrong, it's horrible, don't do it. But I needed a change of paradigm. I had to see how it could work. And it helped, because I did find a way of doing it that isn't cheaty and stupid and wrong. It was just seeing that I have to have this quicksilver last and then into the bin. No matter what else happens, we know that is the goal. No binding getting in the way, which means you have to bind it before you transmute it, which is really quite weird in my previous way of thinking about these problems, because it was always bind, transmute, dump, because you had, well, it was always transmute, bind, dump, because you had to be able to take that dumped product and move it back to be bound to the next thing. There's always that you have to do it you don't actually have to do it a certain way. And that's where we get to fair play, where we actually do it. We make an infinite product that will keep running forever and still gets you 49 cycles. How? By not looping everything. Some of these tracks are not quite as necessary as I made them. Like, I made them huge just to get everything out of the way. But what we've got here is something that does work at the beginning of the puzzle, but does not repeat that work. So many of these puzzles, you do nothing but repeat because you don't want anything superfluous. Well, this one, kind of like the superfluous bits. And so you've got this guy who will do his job and then run away. Got this guy, do their job and then run away. This guy, do the job, then run away. These guys do the job and then just hang out because you're not going to get in the way. Then you've got the parts that will continue. Number 9 here will continue doing number 9's job. Number 10 and 11 will do nothing but their job. So 10 and 11 here, they wait a while, but then they just do their job. And repeat it ad infinitum. Number 9 waits a while, then does their job, repeats it ad infinitum. Number 1 and number 2 waits a while and repeats. But all of these other guys are programmed to do their job and then stop doing their job. You can't tell them to not do their job. They will keep repeating it. But at the end of a track, if you keep telling them plus, they go nowhere. And if there's nothing there for them to grab, they can't break your machine, which is why I have them go out of their way. This guy goes forward and back, which is why I pull him so far away from everything. Could probably move him back 1 or 2, but for good measure, we get him way out of the way. So let's see how this thing works. So it pulls those 3 Quicksilver out into the foreground such that we can get to some leads that get there faster than you would expect. So at the very beginning, we generate a lot of lead very quickly. We don't start these up because it'll ironify lead that we don't want to make iron just yet. We want to stall it for this initial startup. And we get this guy out of the way for the fake ending. We grab 1 on this guy, such that we can grab another there. Grab 1 on this guy, such that we can grab another here. And then 1 on this guy to get that last one. And then it just starts repeating. And you'll be able to get both of them into this in time to create the iron, just in time to drop it into the bin. And then we can just let it run, because from here on out, it is a perfect infinite thing generator. All of the initialization arms are done. They're out of the way. They keep grabbing and releasing, but they're not hurting anybody. So the ones that need to keep doing their job, keep doing their job, and the ones that don't. Now, this is not something you're going to need for every puzzle, but there might be certain ones out there where you're like, I need to do something, but just at the very beginning. Well, this is one way you can go about doing it. And for this particular puzzle, it gets you that one last cycle in a way that isn't cheaty wrong and makes you feel bad about yourself. If you don't feel bad about yourself for doing cheaty things like that, why are you playing this game? You're supposed to be making something magical, marvelous, and wonderful. Make some pretty designs. Don't just cheat your way to the minimum cycles. And if you do cheat your way in, that's fine too, because sometimes they are pretty awesome. But you have to be able to justify the awesome. This episode was a little bit longer because this particular puzzle shows you a lot of things that you might need for future puzzles and comes out of nowhere with that infinite product. Hopefully, I've explained it clear enough such that you can make your own fancy iron filament or armor filament and work your way through all those future infinite product puzzles. And as always, if you've got a really fancy solution to this, leave it in the comments on Twitter or on Discord. And I will see you in the next episode of Opus Magnum with Lyte.